Okay, let's begin. Today, we are in the Siddur on page 86 and 87 in the, actually, you know what, let's, yeah. Yeah, we'll start with page 86 and 87. And we're towards the bottom of the page. Towards the bottom of the page on page 86 and 87. Okay. And the context here is the praise of God, not by people, but by the angels. So we can go back, I guess, to the middle paragraph on the page. May your name be blessed, Tisparach Tzurenu, our rock, our king, our redeemer. Malkeinu v'goalenu, Borei Kedoshim, creator of holy ones. Yishtabach Shimcha Lo'ad Malkeinu, may your name be praised forever, our king. Yotzer Mesharsim, fashioner of ministering angels. Now, regarding those ministering angels, V'asher Mesharsov, Kulam Omedim Berum Olam, they stand at the summit of the universe. Umashmiim B'yiro Yachad B'kol, and they make heard together in one voice. Divrei Elokim Chaim Umelech Olam, with awe, the words of the living God and King of the universe. They are all beloved, they are all flawless, they are almighty. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim. V'kulam osim be'ema u'b'yira retzon konam, and they all do the will of their Maker with dread and reverence. So here we're given an insight into the angelic creations. These divine forces, powers created by God that experience the divine truth to a very high degree. And then we continue, V'chulam posechim as pihem b'kedusha u'v'tahara. They all open their mouth, so to speak, in holiness and purity, b'shira u'v'zimra, in song and hymn, u'mevarchim u'meshabachim u'mefarim u'maritzim u'makdishim. They praise, glorify, revere, sanctify. U'mamlechim es shem hakel hamelech hagadol. They declare the kingship of the name of God, the great, mighty, and awesome King. Holy is He. So, what exactly angels are in the literal sense, I have no idea. The liturgy, however, gives us some insight into characteristics. They experience divine truth, and to the ability, to the extent that they are able to comprehend, but they experience no conflict in that divine truth. in the sense that they're flawless, right? And in expressing that divine truth, while still having a distinct being, their full awareness is the desire or the sense that they should be fully lost in the divine truth, that their beings, that their sense of being shouldn't be. And we, in the liturgy, will describe two categories of angels. The first are the seraphim. They're not named in the liturgy in the beginning. They're only named later. These angels that we've described, the chula mekablim alehem ol malchus shamayim zemizeh, they accept upon themselves the yoke of heavenly sovereignty from one another. And they grant permission to one another. Lahakdish liyotzeram, to declare the sanctity of their creator. And so these divine forces in creation recognize the harmony that exists in creation. And therefore, even though each of them have their own distinct presence, their own distinct, so to speak, place, they don't have they don't have an ego, and so they give permission to one another. They exist in harmony with the other forces. And they express with clear speech, clear articulation, with sweetness, proclaim his holiness, and say with awe, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. Hashem Tzavakos, master of legions, Melo Chol Haaretz Kivodo, the whole world is filled with his glory. And then we have the second category of angels. And in this line, we are told what the name of the first category of angels was. The Ha'ofanim, the Chayos HaKodesh, the Ofanim, which we won't translate, the Chayos HaKodesh and the Holy Chayos, V'rash Godol, with great noise, Misnasiim, they raise themselves up, Le'umas Seraphim, toward the Seraphim, who have spoken in the previous passage. Liumasam, facing them, Mishabachim v'yomrim, they give praise, saying, Baruch kavod Hashem mimakomo, blessed is the glory of God from his place. That's the subject of our discussion today. And the following passage describes the God, the sense of the divine that is praised by the angels. Lokel Baruch Ni'imos Yitenu, to the blessed God, they offer sweet melodies. That refers to the angels just described. Excellent question. How does it help us to know that the angels, what the angels are and what they do? So there are two takeaways from this meditation on the angelic awareness. One is pertaining to our animal soul, and the other is pertaining to our godly soul. Which shall we start with? Let's start with the animal soul, okay? The animal soul is a product of the divine forces of creation, meaning it emerges from creation, the identity, the animal soul, and I should clarify when we say the animal soul, what that means. The nefesh. We mean the part of us that the consciousness and the awareness that a person has that is not divine in nature, but that is selfish in nature. And that, of course, is primarily related to the body. It's related to the individual, the person. And so as a person, we have an awareness of our personhood. And from that stems selfishness. But the person is a product of the world. And the angels are the underlying forces. They are the divine energies, so to speak, the divine forces that God created and through whom God acts in the world. So then we'll get to the relationship between people and angels. So now we're talking about how there is a kind of process. There's you could call it a kind of evolution by which people are connected to angels. But this is all part of our worldly sense. So we have devolved to the degree that what once was a divine force became an individual person. An angel is a specific divine force that has a specific task. From this devolves the individual person that has an identity of self. And so the awareness of what the root of our animal self is a powerful subliminal message to the person that my identity, my personhood, has no business being in the way of my relationship with the divine truth, because it is a product of the divine truth. And here is specifically how that happened. God created the angelic forces, that is the spiritual forces that each have their specific job in the world. And I too am a product of that specific force with a specific job in the world. And I am part of the unity of the universe. My personhood is a part of the unity of the universe. Okay, so this is meant to, in the words of Hasidus, to nullify the animal soul, to humble the animal soul, to bring it in line with the truth. Okay, so this is point number one. Now we come to the relevance that it has to the godly soul. And that relates to the next bracha, which refers to the Torah. Ava Rabbah or Avas Olam, depending on the version you use, says, you have loved us, God, with abundant love, and etc., etc. Our Father, our King, Avinu Malkeinu, Ba'avur Avosenu Shebatchu B'cha, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you, V'talamedem Chukei Chayim, you taught them the laws of life. Kein Techonenu Islamedenu, so may you be gracious to us and teach us. We're talking about the Torah. And so the rest of the prayer is the yearning to be connected to Torah. And this, then, through the Torah, we become placed on a higher level than the angels. Higher level than the angels. How is that? So let's go back to the 2 degrees of the angels, and hopefully In the next 15 minutes or so, we'll be able to cover that topic. The first set of angels, the seraphim, the word seraphim means to burn up. And because they have such a full view of the divine presence, such that they are existing in complete harmony, their sense of self is not very self at all. And so any awareness that they have causes them to be expressed as a fire burning up, like the self becoming disintegrated, becoming consumed. But what happens in fire is it becomes reduced, right? It becomes reduced in the fire to nothingness. You put something in fire and it disappears. And so they want to disappear into the presence of the divine. And this means that they would lose themselves. The words that they say, Kadosh, 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 holy, 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 Lord of hosts, the whole world is filled with his glory. The whole world is filled with the glory of this holiness, of this holy means other, beyond, not like everything else. And so what they're saying is that the divine reality is completely beyond any worldly reality. A worldly reality is is an individual who has a sense of self, selfishness. And so Kadosh means that the divine reality is completely beyond any sense of self whatsoever. And the only response to that, if Maloch al haaretz kavodo, if God's glory is truly filling the whole earth, is to be burned up. Now, alongside that, this awareness is so true to them that the fire is a quiet one. As we see, it is with clear articulation and with sweetness, togetherness, harmony. Now, let's take a moment to talk about miracles. Okay? Miracles are not the ideal way. We don't live with miracles. Torah tells us, Ein somchin al hanes, one should not rely on miracles. And this is not only good advice, it's also theologically important. It's important in how we think about the relationship between God and the world. What a miracle essentially says is that the world as it is incompatible with the divine will. And in order for that divine will to be expressed, the world has to be broken in some way. It has to be circumvented. You have to override the programming of the world in order to make God's will be done. Which is why one view in Jewish philosophy says that miracles weren't because God needed to do the miracle in order to accomplish the goal. For example, splitting the sea in order to save the Jews. It was in order to demonstrate. It was not a tool. It wasn't a tool to get something done. It was a moment of revealing the true reality of the universe, revealing what's truly important to God. It was a teaching device to people so that we would understand, for example, that the Jewish people are God's chosen people, So that would be revealed to the world. Now, in that moment, the way to do that was to show something supernatural, so that you could understand that even though in this moment the Jews look like slaves, in reality, they are of the divine, they are of the infinite. And similarly, the plagues against Egypt were to demonstrate that Egypt is not truly a power. It's a teaching tool to put our perspective in order about what is what in the universe. But the true reality is that God is as present in the natural order as in the miraculous. The problem with miracles is that it makes it seem, if you don't think about miracles correctly, it can seem when looking at a miracle that God is more present in the miraculous than in the natural world. And that's not how we should think about things. So if the angels, if the seraphim are burning up and losing their sense of self because of their divine awareness, there is a truth to that selfishness is, that a sense of self is incompatible with the divine reality, such that they want to burn up, lose themselves completely, disintegrate themselves to be true to the divine truth. But at the same time, what they're saying is that in myself, God is not present. Whereas in the Torah, the teachings of the Torah show us how our life can itself be a vehicle for the divine will, for the divine truth, so that we don't need to burn up. We don't need to lose ourselves. We don't need to disappear. We don't need to forget who we are in order to be, we don't need to fast or escape from reality, meditate, and close our eyes or take drugs in order to be connected with the divine reality. What we need to do is live life according to the Torah, and that includes eating and conducting ourselves in normal human ways, such that the self itself becomes a vehicle for the divine. It was said that when the prophet says, Ki lo machshavosai machshavosechem, my thoughts are not your thoughts, this is only when it's your thoughts. But when we're thinking the thoughts of Torah, when we're thinking Torah thoughts, we are thinking divine thoughts. Then, machshavosai, machshavosechem, your thoughts are my thoughts. When we're thinking Torah thoughts.
Angels have a divine spark in them just like humans do.
So angels don't have the divine spark that humans do.
So then
Right. So in a sense, we're advanced of the angels because angels are only a creation, while we have the ability to do the work of the Creator. We have the ability to do the work of the Creator, that is, by doing the mitzvahs, by thinking thoughts of Torah, by speaking words of Torah. We are embodying God's will. And so in that moment, that's the divine spark, that's the godliness in us. God gave us with the neshama and through the Torah and the mitzvahs, which is spoken of in the next bracha, in the next passage. We are then embodying the divine truth. And the angels, however, can only do what they're told. The people, on the other hand, are expressing something very special by choosing Torah and mitzvahs. Yes, Jane?
Can you explain the 36, whatever they are, the 36 people who the world is sustained by?
The 36 hidden tzaddikim that sustain this hidden tzaddikim, the hidden righteous ones that sustain the world. The idea is generally,
are they angels?
No, they're people.
But I mean, are they angelic people?
No, they're people. They're people who do Torah and mitzvahs. So they're more than angels. They're higher than angels, right? An angel is a divine force in creation, has no choice. It has no free choice. Yes, they have a body, but I'm saying more on a deeper level, the divine forces in creation have no free choice. They are simply tools. They're divine tools for making creation happen. But humans have free choice, which is a divine quality. When we choose to follow God's will, we are in that moment embodying divine. We're embodying the spark of godliness that's in us. Now I want to go to the next passage, and this is the Ofanim, the Chayos HaKodesh, the holy Chayos. They speak Barash Gadol, with great noise, and they raise themselves up to face the Seraphim. They praise and say, and this is something very different. They say, Baruch, Kevod Hashem mimakomo, blessed is the glory of God from his place. And so here you have a description of not Melochel Aretz Kevodon, the whole world is filled with God's glory, but they're referring to God as somewhere else. And the praise is that God's presence be Baruch. As we know, that means be brought into reality such that God's presence would fill the whole world, but they can't really accomplish that on their own. There, again, going back to the effect that this has on the animal soul, they are relying on us.
That doesn't make sense when you come on because that denotes space and God doesn't.
Yes, that's true. That's true. God doesn't have space, and so this phrase doesn't encompass the fullness of divine truth, right? But at the same time, the Ofanim, we said, are on a slightly lower level of their awareness of the divine, and therefore they have a more concrete sense of self, and the experience within the sense of self is that the divine is somewhere else. And so it's true to their reality. It's true to their reality. But at the same time, their sense is that it doesn't need to be that way. That Kevod Hashem, the glory of God, can be Baruch, can be drawn down, can be brought into reality. And again, this is the source of, it is particularly the Ofanim that are the source of the animal soul. That is, the sense of self that we have, which is more concrete in the Ofanim, is more directly the origins of the human sense of self. Whereas the Ofanim, with their concrete sense of self, every ounce of their being declares, let myself be filled with God. And that's all they know. The person, on the other hand, has an aspect in which they say, I am a self, and God is somewhere else. And that's just the way it is. Right? But so you can understand how one devolves from the other. And this, again, is to inspire humility. When we say this prayer, we say this meditation, it inspires humility in ourselves to understand that the only reason we have a self is because it devolved from the Ofanim, from the divine forces, the angelic forces in creation. So, but the other thing that I wanted, interesting contrast between the higher angels and the lower angels. The higher angels are quiet and the lower angels are noisy. And this is a truth that we can experience in human life, that when people are very sure about something, they speak softly. When people protest too much, when they feel the need to declare it and announce it and cry about it and yell about it and make a big deal about it, there's some conflict there. They're not, the reality is not integrated. Even when we're excited about something. If we're excited about something, it means we imagine that it could have been not that way.
So what designates the different levels of angels?
God does.
Is it according to tasks? Because they all believe.
It's in this context, we're saying this is how they're made. What purpose having these different degrees serves, I'll just allude to it briefly. That the malachim, the higher level angels, primarily reside in the world of Beriah, and the lower level angels preside primarily in the world of Yetzirah. So whatever function the world of Beriah serves, the angels in that world are in that sphere. And whatever function is performed in the world of Yetzirah, Beriah is higher, and then Atzilus is the highest. Atzilus, Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiya. Asiya is the concrete reality that we live in.
In heaven's name, excuse me.
Heaven's name, good, yeah.
Siddur or Sal. I mean, they must have been so holy, these men.
Excellent question. Excellent question.
Or to even devise the system of analysis.
Yes.
So that we can internalize the issues on the earth.
Right.
Whether or not this is that they figured out this logic to help human beings understand ourselves.
Yes. So the origins of these texts are from the prophecies of Yecheskel, the Merkava, the divine Merkava of Yecheskel and Yeshaya.
What's
the divine Merkava, right? So these are the visions of Yecheskel and of Yeshayahu. Okay, so these are prophecies. These come in Revelation, and the process by which a prophet, that there are Sfarim that describe a meditative process that a prophet goes through, and training that they engage in to open their minds and to help them to be aware of a different level of existence. And that's not something that we have any kind of concrete knowledge of. Okay. So I just wanted to conclude with this idea about noise versus quiet. That sometimes quiet seems unremarkable. Noise is more remarkable, but in truth, the more quiet it is, and the idea is that as we go into this brachos of Kriya Shema, the goal is to reach ultimate quiet, which is that being a Jew becomes so much of a part of our life, and more specifically, being a servant of God, living a God-directed life becomes so much a part of our life that it's normal, obvious, normal and obvious. And in that sense, we're even quieter than the seraphim. As we said, such that we don't even need to burn up, because living a godly life is higher than the angels, because we can live a normal life, live a human life, and the sense of self becomes no conflict at all with the divine, because we are living as creations of the divine that are acting out his will.
That's the goal.
That's the goal, and that's one that we have available to us every day, and we do it to varying degrees. Every Jew is full of mitzvahs. So every Jew is full of mitzvahs, and that means that our Jewish identity is a part of us, and we are, to the degree that we're in touch with it, all of us are in touch with it to some degree or another.